Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name's Brittany. I am the mother of twin boys, Jackson and Lincoln. They are almost a year old. Their birthday is August 7th. They were born August 7th, 2017. They had a pretty rough start. It was rough for all of us. A lot of people, just think they came early and nobody really knows why. I mean, a lot of people do know why, but, or like, I guess, not why, but like the story, I guess. And I'm sure a lot of you are curious. I got a lot of responses when I asked on Instagram, so that's why I'm making this video. And honestly, my memory is terrible, so I really would like to be able to actually like go back and watch this and have them watch this, and maybe if I've I have a terrible memory, so like if I'm explaining the story to someone, a friend or something, I may have left things out, and there's probably going to be pauses and things in this video because I'm just trying to lay it all out. There may even need to be a couple parts to it just because it is pretty in-depth. So at our first ultrasound, I'm not going to get into my whole pregnancy. I'm actually thinking about doing a separate video for that. But at our first ultrasound, there was one baby. We were only pregnant with one baby. That was in February. And then I started having a little bit of an issue, and I went to see the doctor, a little bit of a scare, and they actually did an ultrasound. Baby was fine, but there were two babies. So I was considered very high risk once they discovered that they were mono-di twins, which is monochorionic diamniotic. Monochorionic is one placenta. Mono is one placenta. Diamniotic means two sacs. They had their own little sacs within one big sac. So thankfully, there is one more riskier pregnancy. It's called monochorionic monoamniotic, meaning like it's one of those things that they actually thought the boys were those type of twins, but again, I'll get into that in another video. But that's a very, very, very risky pregnancy where you have to be hospitalized around 22 weeks to be monitored every single day, several times a day. So basically, I started going to non-stress testing, NSTs, at 28 weeks. And they did this because the boys were pretty small. We had quite a few scares through the pregnancy. We kind of were afraid of their size. We had an idea that they were going to be coming between 32 and 34 weeks. We just didn't know when, and we kind of had to take it day by day with each appointment. 28 weeks, they're small. I'm doing my non-stress testing twice a week. 2 weeks go by and I'm doing my non-stress test on a Monday. I just woke up that morning, showered, got ready because I was going to be going to work after that, and went to my non-stress test. And they're usually around 20 minutes long, and 30, 40, 45 minutes go by, and I'm like thinking, like, I really need to get to work. And the nurse really wasn't saying a lot to me, but she wasn't like leaving me out of the loop. She just said, there's just something that I kind of want to talk to the doctor about, just hold tight. So basically they ended up monitoring me for about an hour and a half until the doctor was out of his last patient appointment, and then she talked to him, and he came over and talked to me and said he's concerned about the boys' heart rates. They were dropping. They were dropping to the 60s for several minutes at a time, over and over, which had never happened before. Like here and there, they would see kind of like lower, like maybe 190 beats per minute, but they were dropping to the 60s, both of them at the same time, which was crazy because the only time we ever saw like an issue with anything was ever with Lincoln, who was baby B, because he was so small, lots of things. But the shared placenta is very scary, nutrition-wise for the boys and blood-wise. So, uh-oh, somebody's waking up. I think. Be right back. Jackson doesn't want to take a nap today. So he's on my lap right now, so I'm going to try to continue this. Anyways, what I was saying is the shared placenta is scary with their sizes. So the doctor wanted to basically do a growth. He said, for sure, I'm going to be sending you to the hospital today. There's a possibility that you're going to be having these babies within the week. Of course, I'm like panicked because I was only 30 weeks, 5 days at that point. I'm texting Josh to let him know. You know, we're kind of both like, no, this isn't happening right now. This can't happen. So anyways, they take me into the exam room, and they do a full growth scan. Mind you, I had just had one the week before. And it was scary. It took about, sorry, I didn't think I was gonna cry, but this is just, it's hard. Just memories and thinking about it and how scary this time was for us. It's okay. So, Lincoln was measuring below the 3rd%. And the way they explained to me that was less than 3 could mean severely low. It could mean just what it could mean 2%. It could mean -10. Like, we just didn't know because that's kind of like the last number. I don't know, comparisons for. I don't know what I'm saying, but studies for. And then Jackson was measuring, he was measuring in the 8th percentile. Very small babies. They were pretty small the whole time, but that appointment was, that day was scary. And also Lincoln was showing backwards cord blood flow, which is very, very scary. Usually at that point your baby's going to pass. So they finished. That took, I would say the ultrasound itself took 45 minutes to an hour. They were very extensive. They wanted to have some good numbers to send to the hospital. Me being the planner that I am, actually not really. I wasn't prepared as much as I thought I was. I had everything that the boys needed at home, but I didn't have a hospital bag packed. I didn't have anything. All I had with me that day was like my purse and like my food to go to work. That was it. Because basically, like, I lived here, doctor's office was here, and work was about 40 minutes away, depending on traffic. So I asked the doctor, like, do I have time to go home? Like, can I go home before you send me to the hospital? He's like, I don't recommend it. So I didn't. I listened and I went straight there. I told them that my doctor sent me, went straight to labor and delivery. I've never done this before. I had never like toured the hospital. I thought it was silly. Sorry if you did that. Like, it's just, it's a hospital. Like, I just figured we would figure it out. Probably not very responsible. Anyways, I went there by myself. My husband was going to be coming right, you know, shortly after. He was just rounding up the things that I asked him to grab. And I went into labor and delivery and they sent me to triage. Like, they didn't understand basically like why I was there. It wasn't in labor, it wasn't in anything, which was frustrating. I said, my doctor called, you know, I don't understand. So they had me do the urine, and then they brought me on for the, like, not the ultrasound, but they were trying to do the NST. They were trying to start the NST on me. And again, this is in triage. So, she starts asking me questions, and she's like, the lady, the nurse, not the lady at the front desk. The nurse starts asking me, she's like, no, you're supposed to be an antepartum. And I'm like, how was I supposed to know that? You know, he just told me to go to the hospital and that he would let you guys know I was coming. Ugh, frustrating. Anyways, they get me into the antepartum room and they hook me up and they're monitoring the boys. I got there around 11:30. My appointment started at 8:30. It's great. I was there forever. And I didn't make any stops in between. But got in the room, like the antepartum room, around 12:30, I want to say. And meantime, Josh had showed up like right before I got into the triage room, and he was so tired. I felt so bad. But anyways, they hooked me up. They were just basically, they just wanted to monitor them. And I, you know, of course at that point I was just like, what is gonna happen? Like freaking out, panicking. Like, I think another baby just woke up. I thought I was gonna get this filmed today. Seems like he just woke up for a second. So I'm in antepartum and whatever, we get the monitors hooked up and everything, and at this point I'm starving. And they said I couldn't have anything, I could only have like liquids. I said, I don't care, like bring me something. I think they ended up bringing me some Jell-O. I ended up sending Josh home because my doctor had called in and said, you know, like everyone thought like no sooner than the next day, right? So they thought no sooner than the next day would we be having them. Okay. I didn't really tell anyone yet. Well, I told like my mom, and then I let my mother and father-in-law know. I'm sorry, Josh let them know. And then I called my dad because my dad had planned on like flying out to meet them, like, you know, when I had them. So I let everyone that, you know, like absolutely needed to know. I didn't want to worry anyone else. So I ended up sending Josh home because he had to work that night and he like had no time off. Like he only had a few days, a couple days at that. And he was just working the one job at that time, graveyard. So I sent him home like, I don't know, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. No, it was probably more like 4 o'clock. And he had to be up, he had to be to work at 10. So I sent him all the way back home just so he could sleep, because that stupid window bench, if you've ever been in antepartum, ridiculous. It's like it's like a window bench. It's not even, nothing like the recovery rooms. So, and my husband's very tall. Anyways, I sent him home so he could sleep. Sorry, I keep rambling. Hours go by, they're just like, you know, like getting my medical history and everything, and I was very uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. They had said that night they wanted to basically to calm me down so that they could get the babies on the monitor. What's it called? So that they could like monitor them all night. They were gonna give me a, whatever that crazy medication. I'm gonna insert it here. Ambien. They were gonna give me an Ambien. I had never had an Ambien in my life. I was kind of afraid of that, but also I wanted to keep the boys in, so I agreed. But we didn't even get that far. Basically, they were having a very hard time keeping the boys on the monitor, and there were several times where a couple minutes at a time we didn't even know like who was who. They had lost track at that point because they were so stressed out. Their heart rates were still very low. They never really went back up. And then around 9 o'clock, let me backtrack. They were doing everything in their power. It was great. The nurses were great. Everything was great. They were doing everything in their power to like try to make me comfortable so I could like just lay and relax. And I don't know if the babies were sensing that I was stressed out, was making them stressed out. But they did everything that they could. And like I said, around 9 o'clock, maybe 9:15, this nurse runs in frantic. And she is yelling, like, we need to get her prepped, we need to get her shaved, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, why is she yelling? What? Like, I was under the impression that we were still having an ultrasound. We were having a C-section the next day, and the reason why I had to have a C-section is because they were just way too small, and it was way too risky for me to try to have a natural birth. That is what I ultimately wanted, but it's not very common whatsoever with monodi twins. Anyways, so this lady's like yelling, whatever. I want to backtrack. My doctor came to see me around 6 o'clock. My OB, not the high-risk doctor. My OB came to see me, and he said, let's plan for tomorrow. We're not going to schedule it, but I'm going to say around 2 o'clock because that's when they have an opening. And, of course, I was like, why? You know, like, I would rather have just stayed admitted and kept them in as long as possible. But he said, they're under a lot of stress, and they're safer out here. So, again, fast forward. Nurse comes in. The other nurse is trying to calm her down. And she made her leave the room because she was just stressing me out. And I asked the nurse that was dealing with me, I wish I could remember her name. I asked her, I said, should I be concerned? Like, why is she freaking out? I'm like, you're not freaking out. Why is she freaking out? She said, well, we called your doctor and he wants to take them tonight. And I'm like, I'm here by myself. Like, that was really hard. I said, are you for sure? Like, the doctor is going to be coming to do this. And by this time, it was like 9:30, 9:45. And she said, yes, your doctor's on the way. I don't know why this is so hard to talk about. No. And I said, okay. And of course, you know, like, I'm like, crap, Josh is like getting ready for work. Like, he's on his way to work right now. Again, I said he had to be there at 10 o'clock. It was 9:45. I called him. He was like walking out the door. And I was like, you have to come here. He's like, but we're not, like, he didn't get it. And I said, the doctor's on the way. Like, you have to get here. And I knew at that point, I was like, there's no way he's going to make it here in time. Even if he left right this second. And he says to me, like, are you sure? I've got to stop into work first to let them know. And I was like, no, that's unacceptable. You cannot go into work. You have to get here. It's going to take you 40 minutes to get here. And he said, okay. That was it. That was the last time I talked to him. And of course, I was like, still like freaking out. There is no way in hell he's going to miss the birth of our kids. I'm going to be there and by myself. Fast forward, they bring me into the, first they brought me into the like recovery room, which they did that to like, until the OR was open, I guess. Which seemed like 5 minutes. I think it was more like 15 minutes. Maybe not even that. I don't know. But I think they were waiting on someone to be done in there. So they started like pumping me full of like the magnesium and everything else. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention the steroids. So they gave me a steroid shot around 8 p.m. It was about 8 p.m. And then they had, 8 p.m. And they said the very soonest, if needed, they could do it again was 12 hours later. Typically it's 24 hours later, but they said they would basically do it at 8 p.m. and then they would do it at 8 a.m. and then we would have the babies around noon or something, or 2 o'clock. Sorry, I'm so all over the place. I'm trying to remember everything. So I'm in the recovery room for 10-15 minutes and then they start rolling me into the OR and I'm like sheer panic. Does anyone know, like, at that point, they had taken my phone away. I'm like, does anyone know where my husband is? Why is he not here? And of course, like, there's no way in hell he would have made it, like, in that short time. I'm like, he ended up making it there in like 25 minutes, which is amazing. Like, I don't even understand. But so they did my epidural. I'm laying on the bed and my doctor comes in and I said, is my husband here? Is my husband here? I asked him and he's like, no, he's not. And then probably like 30 seconds go by and he's like, oh, your husband's here. He's double fisting monsters. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course that's him. That's definitely him. I was like, can he come in? And he's like, yeah, they're gowning him up right now.